you can continue recording. This is a federal document. Hello, welcome to the first episode of the Nautical Podcast. I'm your host, Speaker James Barry, and my co-host is nowhere to be seen. He's late. I might fire his ass. So until he comes around, Justice Henry Bell, are you there?
Yes, I am present.
All right, you're gonna be my co-host until my normal co-host shows up, which I don't fucking know when that will be. All right, let's get into it. Our first topic for the day is gonna be where are my notes? Where are my notes? I have it somewhere here. Just give me like 5 seconds. You know what? We're going off the books. Okay. Do you have any topics you would like to talk about?
Political or non-political?
It doesn't matter.
Okay. We're going to talk, I guess the first topic we can have is the cult of Bingus.
The Bingus cult.
Yeah.
It is a church, not a cult.
Whoever said that, I hope you get testicular cancer. I can say that, right?
And
I don't.
if I don't have them?
You've raised
well.
the rating from PG to PG-13.
Oh well, people can cope.
Yeah. So
Well,
the church, quote unquote, Church of Bingus, has been some very prominent members, like the ghost of Representative Anime Femboy John Parker.
Anime is not in the name anymore.
The NASA director, amongst some others. So what do you think of them, Mr. James Barry, Speaker James Barry?
I mean, I believe in the freedom of religion, but you see, the problem is that the NASA director doesn't do shit.
Yeah, that is true.
So as long as he's in that quote unquote church, it's quite counterproductive because all of the members in there are very productive in their church and everything. But the NASA director, he's kind of irrelevant.
I think he's the leader of the church.
I honestly think it's been quite clear that the ghost of Representative Femboy John Parker is the cult leader.
The real leader. I mean, I hope this cult doesn't tell its members to do, dangerous things. That would be really, really hurtful if it did.
The thing is that whenever they do tell them, oh my gosh. Anyways, moving on. The cult or the religious movement, it's very similar to the Christian faith in that they have their own commandments.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the Christian faith with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but it's the Flappa, the Saga, and then the Holy Bingus.
Ooh. I mean, I think the cult or church, whatever you'd like to call it, is protected under free speech, and I think it should be treated as such. Now, I believe that it's craziness, but maybe that's just me. But it's really funny how they actually try to immolate Christianity. But onto like a more serious topic, other than the church, quote unquote, Church of Bingus, politics. So, who do you think, Mr. James Barry, will arise in the next election cycle? Now it's a midterm after President Scott. Now we know his approval rating has gone really, really low. What do you think will be the next course of action?
The next course of action will probably. first off, you are talking about the presidential race, correct?
No, not necessarily, but more of the midterms and the presidential that's going to come in 4 years, 3 years actually.
I believe that we're going to be seeing a major fuck around with the parties, seeing as Senator Anthony Belanti, I believe, and
Bellant.
Henry Belanti, and then uh, the ghost of Minority Leader Henry Schloyo are going to be trying to run on the Republican ticket, while Otto Wright and myself are going to be running on the Democratic ticket. And I firmly believe that this is going to be a major mind fuck to the citizens of the United States, because for X amount of years we've been committed to conservatives and right wingers running for the Republican Party, and leftists and what have you on the left running for the Democrats. And whenever we watched Eric Scott, who is a profound, moderate.
Well, I think Mr. James Berry has something to attend to. In the meantime, I'll talk. I'm just saying that progressives are not really. I don't really think they're going to win the nomination, and if they do, I think that there's definitely going to be a huge shift. Now, seeing that I'm a justice, my role isn't necessarily political, but I am going to say that I think that that if things continue going on as they are going, the Republican Party and the Democrat Party will shift. But I think that there's some good conservative options out there for who is going to take the Republican ticket. And I don't think that Minority Leader Henry Scholio and Anthony will necessarily win the seat. And I think that they will receive opposition. And I think that I personally will not vote to progressives to be in the Republican ticket. And I think that other Republicans definitely think the same way. So I think that even if it happens, it's probably going to flop.
Agree. But whenever we look at the polling that the Republican Party has done, whenever I last checked, which was a couple days ago, was former Vice President Chris Parrish was at 7, and then at 7 votes, and then Senator Anthony was at 3. So that does mean that the Republican Party does have some progressives that would and do support a progressive leader. If
okay,
where is that polling?
Where's that polling? I'm trying to look for it right now.
I think it was in Republican somewhere. The Republican subchat. If you scroll up a while.
I'm looking for that because I don't remember we did a poll recently on that, but I could have been asleep when it happened. But I definitely think that we are conserving our conservative image. Now, I do think that there are a little bit of Democrats, but I think and hope that Republicans. Okay, so here it is. And if so, this is the polling, and it is right that 7 said Parrish and 3 said Belanti. Yes, I'm shocked at one of them who said Belanti, but yeah, I could definitely see that some liberals are joining the Conservative Party and conservatives are joining the Liberal Party, and that could lead to some shifts in the future.
Also, with the most likely candidate for the Democrat Party being Otto Wright, I would be very intrigued on that race between Christian Parrish and Otto Leonard Wright. I firmly believe that it'll be a very close. It won't be a major landslide for one party. It might even go to Congress because I highly doubt that majority of the Democrats would even vote for Otto, and they would much rather put write-ins because of how traditional and how conservative Otto actually is.
Now, I'm a conservative, and I stick to conservative ideals. I'm not necessarily going to stick to the Republican Party if it becomes progressive, if it does not represent my values. But I think that we're going to have to definitely watch out in these next few elections to see who holds sway. Now, in another poll that we did in the Republican Party, it was like, should we move more progressive or should we be more conservative, or should we stay more traditional? And the polling data came overwhelmingly, we should be more traditional. And I really don't know how that is going to work, seeing that there is a lot of conservatives. I think that this will definitely destroy the political parties, but I think it's going to have an issue. Let's say new members join. New members are going to join under the pretext that the Republican Party is conservative and the Democrat Party is liberal. And I think that what might need to happen if it continues to go the way it is going, they're going to have to change the parties to be the conservative party and the liberal party instead of Democrat and Republican, not only to give new people a chance to see, but also to better define the values than just two names.
Well, so if we're gonna have to eventually change the names of the parties based on their values, not every Republican is a conservative, and not every Democrat is a liberal. Because what I've learned from my time in the Democratic Party is that liberals are more than likely centrist to them. So the extremists are the really progressive ones, like Anthony, for example.
Mm-hmm.
What we need to realize is that we need to have inclusive names for the parties, because if we have like the Conservative Party and then the Liberal Party, we're going to have to create so many other parties for people that have their own ideologies. Because I don't think a Republican who isn't a conservative and who is more progressive would have a hard time fitting in with the Conservative Party, quote, and then having another hard time fitting in with the Liberal Party if he were stuck between those two options. And if those two parties are the main parties that we go off of for the two-party system, it's going to be really hard for them to get into elections, because the two major parties will be the two major ones elected. And it's going to be a hard thing for them to get their political ideals across, because it's going to be in such opposition to those two parties.
Yeah, and I think that that's a very accurate representation, because I think that people use conservative and liberal to define many different things. And I was just saying that in necessarily, if the parties descend to not being recognizable to what they are IRL, that maybe something like conservative or right-wing party or left-wing or liberal party might be something that might be considered by people due to the confusion that it will cause new members. Now, I think it's interesting to see that people have risen in independence. We have had a rise in independence. Now, I think that is gone, and I think they're coming back to their preferred parties. But I think that we need to be wary of people who come to the party for political gain and not because they represent the value of the party. Now, I've always looked out at people like that, and I hold my suspicions to some people. Now, I do think that Republicans and Democrats should be accepting to other people who want to join their party who don't necessarily have their views, but I'm always looking out at people who join the Republican Party or who join the Democrat Party for political gain.
Yeah, like we've seen this happen a lot. Admittingly, myself has done this, and I regret doing it, but we have seen a lot of people join the respective parties that they've joined just for the fact of political gain. They don't care anything about the platforms. They don't care anything about what to do with their country. Unlike I have, the reason why I switched was because I felt betrayed by the Republican Party. But now I feeling that way because the president that we are under is doing a horrible job at what he's doing. I truly believe that abusing power as a citizen by joining parties should and already is an offense, because clearly, using myself as an example, I've been fined almost over $250,000.
Yeah, I actually had a lawsuit ready, but I hold it back out of kindness. That would have
I know.
around $5 million.
A lot more if I started actually suing people for it.
Yeah, because it's fined double exponentially. So if you do 3 offenses, those offenses add on really quickly. And I think that I will have to begin to use the Party Protection and Anonymity Act, or someone will have to begin using it, because I think that if you want to join the Republican Party, you should have at least 75% to 60% of the ideas of the Republican Party. And if you don't, stay with the Democrats. And, a lot of people were fleeing the Republican Party for the Democrats just for political power. And I kind of felt a little bit sorry for the Democrats because, if you're going to join the Democratic Party, please be Democrat. You know what I mean? And I think that people have chose power over principle. That's what I've been saying. And I think that if the Republican chair and the Democrat chair actually begin to prosecute these cases, you would see that it would stop. That's why I made the Party Protection and Anonymity Act.
Another thing is, I would like to think that in my time with politics here, that President Shapiro versus Eric Scott, those two being one of the only 2 major presidents besides Joshua Klebnik, I would like to see as them both as just average. I haven't really seen like an exponential like quote or something that they have done from their times as president. And the reason why behind this is that under Scott's first administration, he bombed Iran and then just left office. He abandoned his post as president. And under Shapiro's administration, I was kind of torn here, but the action that really defined his averageness for me was the fact that we went out and just sent a missile strike over Ukraine, Donbas-held Ukraine, my bad. And I think that his actions could have been just if you're arguing for the social standpoint that they're in, but I don't think that we could have. There could have been better ways to deal with that situation by negotiating. And the major flaw there is that I don't believe that Shapiro had a Secretary of State. If he did, I don't know who it was. It's either that he had a Secretary of State or a Secretary of Defense. I'm not sure either one. But I think that from both administrations, they're just equally average at the moment. I'm still holding my tongue on that because we still have yet to see the rest of Eric's administration. But starting out, they're both average, but I would say that Shapiro is more liked by the people now because we have seen what has happened whenever we elected Eric Scott as the president of the United States. And I firmly believe that we could have chosen better. Even the former vice president has told me, and I quote, James, you should be running as an independent because we need this to go to Congress. And I feel horrible. I feel horrible for not running as an independent because that would have sent the vote to Congress. And by that time, if the Congress voted on it that same night, we would have seen at least an Ben Shapiro presidency with maybe an Underwood vice presidency. So I'd be much better with that. But instead, I decided to put my political party over my political beliefs, and that's where I single-handedly fucked up. I should have been more.
That there was malfeasance on the Republican side as well, and that we did not go after Scott hard enough. If we had, because the situation in East Timor, if Republicans really wanted to, I could have said, look, let Scott do whatever he wants, make this situation really bad, blow it out of proportion. What Republicans did is we fought tooth and nail to stop a war with East Timor and de-escalate the situation. We saw what happened with East Timor, and you had Democrats who were ready to invoke the 25th Amendment. Now, the reason I think people should not have elected Eric Scott to his post is because he left the presidency. There is in a time of crisis, and if you are a leader, what a leader does is says, look, I might not be liked right now, but I'm going to work for the American people in this tough time for myself. What Eric Scott did is he said, I'm getting heat. I'm going to disappear for a couple of days. I'm going to smooth things over. I'm going to butter stuff out, and then I'm going to worm myself back into politics. And that's exactly what he did. And so I'm not going to blame this all on yourself, and I don't think you should blame it all on yourself. I think what happened was Eric Scott was able to make people forget about his foreign policy blunders and move with this agenda of this populism. And he really had like a cult-like following. And I think as soon as he became president and as soon as he did what he did with declassifying the information, that veneer was snapped. That veneer fell down, it disappeared, it dissipated really quick. And I think this is what happened with Scott the first time. He was able to sum up this mist about this Eric Scott presidency being so good. And then as soon as he became president, people really understood this is not good. And we're seeing this happen again. So I wouldn't necessarily be too hard on yourself. He's done this before.
I think the thing that really woke me up about it is that the fact that nobody expected what he did by the declassification. I think that if he didn't do that, his approval rating would still most likely be where it was before the election.
Yes.
But seeing as what he did by declassifying it, I think that it's really going to affect him in the next 3 years of his presidency. And I do wish the best for him, and I do wish that his presidency could remain successful. But I truly don't think that he's going to be liked by the people or the Congress as a whole, depending on which way midterms goes.
I mean, usually Congress doesn't really have the highest approval rating. So most of the time, the president's higher than Congress. But you look at Scott's approval rating, and his approval rating is 24% right now, trending downwards. You don't get to 24% by doing just a little thing. You get to 24% by doing something big. And the thing I really don't understand is, why did he leak those messages? And why did he do that? And he didn't consult anyone in his administration. And it was spiteful. And I think what Scott is doing is he's trying to stay back. He's trying to stay hidden, because He's been on the servers for some time, and I'm pretty sure he reads the messages that we send, but he has been really quiet. And another thing I would like to draw attention to is that people who are speaking bad about Eric Scott, they're getting removed from the press room, which I think is very, very smart of Eric Scott, because he doesn't want to bring more light to how horrible his administration is being. But we do have cases in the Supreme Court, and they might be accepted and they might not be accepted. That will be something that you'll have to wait for. But I think that it's very concerning that he is turning himself silent to come back and do stuff. And also the way he hasn't really addressed the situation. Now, if you look at the White House live area, it's talking about his trip to Saudi Arabia, and his trips all over the thing. And then he talked about the federal tax code. He leaked the information pertaining to the presidency right over. I'm trying to right now. Right over here. And then he said, "That's all for now. Thank you." And then he came back a couple minutes later and he said, "I'll be in Guam for 1 to 2 days. Don't let anything bad happen." And then he pinged the minority leader. And I think that was very calloused of him. He didn't say, "Look, I am sorry for spreading classified information that could potentially lead to nuclear war with Russia." He completely brushed the situation off. And I think that was very immature and very childish of him.
And another thing that I would like to open eyes to is that he said that this administration will be inclusive and open to the people. Why don't, and this may be my lack of attention to everything going on in the press room, but why haven't we seen anything from White House Live about what he is actually doing in those countries? Or is that going to be classified information as well? Because he said the entire purpose of his administration would be open to the people, and like a certain amount of stuff would be classified information. Now, where is all the declassified stuff that he's going to be declassifying to the people so that they are informed that our president is not a complete psychopath?
Yeah, and that's another thing too, and I think that was very important of you to point out. He said, "Oh, I have nothing to hide, and that I will declassify everything from my administration," blah blah blah. All of this, this talk. He hasn't declassified one thing from his administration, but he had the audacity to classify information from the Shapiro administration, which was very stupid. But he hasn't declassified anything from his administration in his time in office. Added to that, the fact of what you said, that he has been crisscrossing around the world. But what is he doing there? He shows like this image of himself moving around the country, epic, and we're with Saudi Arabia and this. But what are they doing there? You know what I mean? Why are you traveling all over the country? What are you doing? And I think that was a very good question to actually bring up, talking about the Eric Scott administration.
And another thing is too, if you see the pictures of him moving around, I would like to point out how unprofessional he looks while walking around the White House. Well, yes, that is where he lives. We don't really see the president and his administration look so unprofessional. Like, if you look at his shoes, you look at his outfit, it's all baggy, and I find it a disgrace, actually, that we have a president walking around in his fucking sneakers.
I think that what Eric Scott decides to wear now, y'all, I tried to dress nicely. I'm in the Supreme Court. I was in Congress, and I try to keep my appearance up because I don't want people looking at a trash bag while I'm introducing bills or shooting them down for being poorly written. So I think that appearances are very important, and I think if you're representing the United States of America, at least try to do them nicely. Now, that's not really the biggest concern to me. I do think that it's distasteful, but if you're a good president, who cares really what you wear? But I would have to say that the way the president has handled the press room to me is very concerning, that he is removing Republicans off of press room because they say mean statements about Mr. Scott. And I think that is concerning to a certain extent, and I think that needs to be looked into. Also, what I would like to say is there was a big push to impeach Eric Scott, and I know it passed the House. I don't really know what happened with the Senate trial. Do you have any knowledge about what happened to the Senate trial?
It failed.
Yeah,
It failed.
they acquitted the president.
Which I think that wasn't a very good decision, because he did do what he did, and he should be impeached for it, and he should be removed from office for that, and Vice President Underwood. Now, I knew there was something going on with the 25th Amendment. I don't think really much came out of that, but I would like to point one key thing. Eric Scott left the Democratic Party to be independent. Now, I don't know if the Democrats heckled him away, but if you have to leave your own party to be independent after what you did, that really shows something. And I personally don't think that if you're a president, you should necessarily change your role or your political party as time moves on. But I think it's very interesting to see that he moved himself to be independent after the debacle that happened.
Yes, I would like to believe that after what he did, that the Democratic Party majority of them hopefully pushed him out of the party. But I think that with the party chair of the Democrat Party, and seeing how jokingly, like how he jokes around, I highly doubt that with him as the party chair that the Democrat Party would have pushed him out. But it's still hopeful in my mind that the Democratic Party woke up and realized, hey, this guy just declassified a bunch of stuff, and that could harm our nation, and so he has to go.
Now, I'm telling you this, that if this happened in the Republican Party, they would be pushed out, and there would be calls for impeachment. We and this is something that I've believed, and I've went against Republicans before if they've said or done something stupid, you know. That if that happened in the Republican Party and there was stuff like that, we would say, bye-bye, you're going to go to the independents, because we don't tolerate that stuff. Republican Party, we value integrity, we value honesty, and we value people who have basic common sense and basic human dignity to understand that if I declassify this information, what would the consequences of that be? And you're president of the United States. You're not a senator. You're not a House representative. You have a team of 7 people, or 7, I don't know how many people are in his administration, but you have a team of people in your administration whose job it is to make sure that the country runs smoothly. It's not like you're a one-man job. You have a whole entire group of people, and you still and you didn't consult them, and you declassified this information. Now, if I were president, and I don't know if I'll ever be president right now, I don't really want to be president, I would definitely be consulting my advisors and my cabinet on releasing information like this. Or even if I didn't consult my cabinet, I would be thinking, what implications does this evidence have for the rest of the country? And I think that this completely backfired on Eric Scott. I think he was going to go around and he was going to do speeches, and he was going to have this cult following here and there, and it was all going to be handy. It was all going to be dandy. It was going to be it was going to be bees and roses. It was going to be beautiful. But everything that he declassified didn't hurt President Shapiro at all. It did not do what it was intended at all. And I think that that was really funny how he tried to dig a grave for someone else, and he should have digged a grave for himself, because he's lying in one now.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked. Anyways, yeah, I firmly believe that Shapiro should have won his second term, even though I voted for Eric blindly. I seriously think that if I'm sorry, something's sidetracking me. So, if we want to move on to another topic, we can.
Sure. What about serious or not serious?
It doesn't matter at this point.
All right, we're gonna go serious because we're already talking about serious stuff.
All right.
The Supreme Court, and I'm in the Supreme Court, and I'm trying to bring attention to it because I think Supreme Court is a bit underrated. We have so many inactive justices. What do you think should happen with them?
I firmly believe that if they're an inactive justice, like Popling Zoom, they should be removed from their position, because whenever in question, are they benefiting the justice, like the Supreme Court, in any way possible? Are they voting on what they need to vote on, or are they just sitting in that position to gain the profit of being justice?
Yeah, and there are some inactive justices. Now, I don't divulge much about what happens inside the court. I'm going to tell you that there are inactive justices, and it takes forever to get their attention to. And I mean, it's not like you're being asked to do a lot in the Supreme Court. What you have to do is you have to say yes or no to accept a case, and you have to be there for what, an hour at most to listen to court proceedings. And even if you don't listen to court proceedings, you can read them a bit later and then vote. That's all you have to do. That's really all you have to do. It's not that complicated. It's not like Congress where you're expected to write bills. Now, when I was in Congress, I felt it was my duty to write legislation, and so I did write legislation. And as you know, because you and I have been in Congress, our congressional time has overlapped. When I write bills, I make sure they're good quality bills. I take my time on them. I make sure that they fit the Constitution. Even though one of my bills did go to the Supreme Court, I still believe that that bill followed the Constitution. The Child Life and Protection Act. But abortion is banned, and it is still banned because the Supreme Court did have a case on that, but nothing really came out of it. There was no verdict, so it's still there. Abortion is still banned. So I guess it worked out in the end. But when you're in the Supreme Court, I think it is your duty to do your job, and you get paid a lot for it. Congress, I think, should get paid more than what they get paid now. At least if they worked as hard as I did in Congress. Now, I'm not trying to toot my horn, but I did write a lot of legislation. And I know a lot of people who did write legislation. It's not the easiest thing in the world. You have to know what you're talking about. We don't have lobbyists to write legislation for us in the server. So I think that we need to root out these inactive justices. Now, what do you think you will do to root out inactive justices? You've named one justice. Are you going to actually take action against them?
Honestly, if they truly don't serve a purpose to the Supreme Court, I might look into what it requires to remove a justice. But seeing as that's only one justice that I've named, I'd like to name another justice that is inactive most of the time. His name is Joseph Arcidiacono. But the reason why he's inactive most of the time is because IRL, he's a Marine, and so he's not gonna have time to do what it's necessary to be in the Supreme Court. But I truly think that he should be able to stay in the Supreme Court because he knows the law, and he knows the Constitution, and he knows, because it's his job as a Marine. He is supposed to uphold and defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. But so to answer your question, yes, I might look into taking action against a Supreme Justice if I have to. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it kind of does answer my question. It's just I think that you should be active in your post. I don't know if you can really impeach secretaries, but I know that there's a bunch of inactive secretaries. And I remember when I was in Congress, I was really, really looking into secretaries, if they were active, if they were not active. And I think that, especially when you get positions in bureaucracy and stuff, I think that you deserve to be active and help the president out. And so I think that that's something that I think the president has to work on himself, is to make sure that these people are active. And I think that that's very important, that you need to be active in the Supreme Court, and you need to have respect for the court, and for whatever position you may be in. I think that that's essential.
Yes, I agree too. About the impeachment of the secretaries and the cabinet, I thought it for the longest time that they could only be fired by the president because they're anointed by the president. But seeing as they're elected on, like voted upon in the Senate that makes them civil officers, and civil
Yes.
officers can be impeached.
It
And
actually,
removed.
I'm sorry, I'd like to clarify. It actually depends on the cabinet position, and like the chief of staff cannot be impeached by the Senate.
You cannot.
The chief of staff doesn't need to be confirmed by the Senate, so the Senate can't remove them.
Oh, okay.
But the Secretary of Education and stuff, and those people can be removed. And I think one thing, do we have an Attorney General? That's a question I've had.
I
Because
do not believe we do.
we need to get one then. I think that's very important because, we have certain cases which are against the United States of America. And, I don't think it's fair that a congressperson who is probably busy, has other things to do, has to be dragged to court to take care of these cases. So I think that that there needs to be an Attorney General. I think the Scott administration needs to find one.
Yeah, looking at our government right now, we do not have a Secretary of Treasury, and we do not have an Attorney General. It says we don't have a Chief of Staff, but we do, and it's Chief of Staff Kanye West. So Henry, guess what? Update government.
I guess he has to. But I think
All right, he updated it.
that Congress is an ecosystem. Now, I like to joke about the swamp, and so I like to call the swamp DC, and I like to call different people in the swamp different different animals. So you're in what I consider the DC swamp. I don't mean you're, but that's what I consider what you're in, and I consider the Supreme Court's a bayou because a bayou is kind of like a river, so stuff flows to the court. So who would you have to say would be a swamp alligator in Congress? Who would you say would be a swamp alligator
in Congress? And by alligator, you mean the person who doesn't belong?
No, a very vicious congressperson.
Oh, the most vicious?
Yeah.
I would, at the moment, I would like to believe it's Joe Kennedy.
Snake Oil Ken.
Yeah.
He fits more. For me, he's more of the water moccasin of the swamp. Who would you say would be the most swamp turtley? So like the swamp turtle is a person who's like really weak, doesn't really do much in Congress.
The weakest person in Congress, most likely has to be the ghost of Femboy Parker. Sure, he votes whenever I ask him to vote, but I don't. I only see bills that he's sponsored, but I've truly never seen a bill that he has written.
So what do you think about the swamp turtle? Now, the swamp turtle is someone who's really active. No, not swamp turtle, the swamp frog. So this person is someone who's always writing legislation and stuff. Who would you say would be the swamp turtle?
Whenever he is here,
frog.
Turtle, the swamp frog. Whenever he is here, it is going to be Representative Teddy Roosevelt, because whenever I see legislation from him, and this is about the updated Congress, not the old Congress where you were in, because if we're talking about the old Congress, you're definitely the frog in it. But whenever we're talking about the updated Congress, the new one, I firmly believe that it's Teddy Roosevelt, because he has given me some solid legislation. And sure, it may have failed the Senate, but even though it has passed the House, it was very good legislation that could have benefited the American people.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think one of Teddy Roosevelt's bills has passed both chambers. I don't know why. I mean, when I try to make bills, I usually I like temper I touch the water first, and so if it's like Democrat controlled, I tend to write more bipartisan legislation, and the vice versa. Oh, the president's here, but he's on deafen, so he can't hear us.
Oh yeah, fuck the president. I'm joking.
But I think that was interesting. The swamp. What natural feature represents the White House?
The natural feature for the White House. So you're talking about an ecosystem here?
Yeah, something like that.
it usually depends on the president. So,
Mhm.
like, as of right now, for Eric Scott's presidency, I would like to think it's a jungle because it's going through so much. It's so, like, diverse in what it's doing. Some of it may be beneficial, some of it definitely not. But like I said, it depends on the president himself. So we could have like a president whose White House is dry as a desert. It doesn't do anything.
And an active presidency.
Yeah, then the active presidents who are like going through like a tornado through Tornado Valley with stuff
Yeah.
happening like every single week.
I would probably be very active. I don't think anyone would want to work in my administration because I would give them so much work to do. Because that's just the type of person I am.
From previous administrations in the far past, and I'm talking about like previous simulations.
Yeah.
I've proven myself to be a solid Secretary of Defense before I ever had any interest in Congress. I would always be everybody's Secretary of Defense, and I've proven myself many times throughout those that cabinet position, which is why I'm honestly shocked whenever I see uh, Eric Scott choose somebody else for the cabinet position of the Secretary of Defense besides myself.
And you didn't have a job for some time before you entered Congress because you were yeah, but that didn't really coincide with the Scott. I think the current Secretary of Defense, Otto Leonard Wright, I think that he is pretty good. I think that you have to really have competent people there. Now the Secretary of State. Now I don't know who the Secretary of State is, but I don't really have very nice words for them. And here's
it's Tony Stark.
Tony Stark. Now, I don't think that Tony Stark is a bad person. I'm not saying that, but the Chief Justice had to intervene with Tony Stark talking to a Chinese official. The Chief Justice, someone whose job is to interpret the Constitution, that's her job. That's their job. Excuse me. That's their job. And you have to bring them in to talk to a Chinese official. And this applies to the president too, that the president was dealing with a Russian official and the Chief Justice had to be called in. I think that shows incompetence. So I think that if Scott is incompetent dealing foreign policy wise, you need to have a Secretary of State who's able to deal with officials. Either you're going to transfer the Chief Justice as Secretary of State or you're going to find someone. But you can't have someone that requires on someone from another branch of government who isn't even supposed to know anything about foreign policy for their job to take that position. I really was just amazed when I heard that story on Liberty Bell with Otto.
I'm truly shocked to hear that as well, because I never really thought that the Chief Justice would have to intervene with somebody talking to a foreign minister. And for the last remaining 9 minutes of our show, that will be wrapping up our political segment. Something I've always wanted to talk about, whether if I had a co-host with me or not, is the Industrial Revolution and the locomotives behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I've always found locomotives fascinating, to say the least. Many people have seen me post a lot of locomotive and transportational related stuff. At one point, while in the Democratic Party, and this is something that I don't know why I did, I truly don't know. I was trying to nationalize the railroad systems for the transportation department. The way I had it set up was that it wouldn't all just be one railroad. It'd be separate parts, like different regions that would be funded by the national government, but they wouldn't, if they were small enough, if they were small railroads, they would be nationalized, but if they were huge multi-billionaire companies like Union Pacific or CSX, or Amtrak, they wouldn't have to be nationalized, if you will, because my nationalization plan would benefit the small railroad companies like Norfolk and Western, Chesapeake and Ohio, uh, Rio Grande, and BNSF, which was the, I think, Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad.
Mhm.
That was going to benefit them, but it would be sacrificing stuff for the UP and the CSX. And I don't know why I did this. I truly think that it was a moronic idea of me to do so. I should have stuck with the foundation principle of what I had, that rail transportation should be privatized,
Mhm.
because using Britain, our close ally, as an example, in 1948 they nationalized their railroads into the British Railways, and that went successful for them for about, I want to say, like 10 years,
Yes.
until like the late 1950s, whenever they started dieselization, which is the process of removing your steam locomotives to bring in newer diesels. And the problem with this is that since it was governmentally funded by Parliament,
Yep.
the locomotives introduced into British Railways, the diesels, were
Yeah.
were underfunded. They they failed every single express route they took, whether it was express, passenger, or freight, and they even proven to be more unreliable than the. You may not know about this, but the Great Western Star class, it's a four-cylinder type locomotive, and it was a steam locomotive, and it was more successful than an eight-cylinder diesel locomotive used by British Railways. It's
Yeah.
truly sad looking at how far as humankind we've come. We've created these monster type machines that can pull tremendous amount of tons, and it's seemingly like we're going backwards with our technology, because if it's a four-cylinder steam locomotive, it surely could pull less than an eight-cylinder diesel, couldn't it? Like, would you believe that it would be weaker?
Now, my thing is how you were talking about this, and I was thinking that the planes are really expensive, and having locomotives that can take you to one part of the country, maybe railways, and I know they were really big in America, and it was like this huge thing when they happened. But I do have a question for you: is that diesel is less economically environmentally safe than steam, because steam, as far as I think, is water. I know it's water. I know it's some sort of liquid. But steam uses heat with water to make the train move. Am I correct in
Yeah,
that? So isn't
yeah,
it
that is
not
correct.
only isn't it not only more efficient and more environmentally friendly, so we can get fast and efficient travel without using a lot of fossil fuels by using steam locomotives?
Um, well, that's a separate, like, if it's more efficient, no, because when the amount of coal and water it takes to power a steam engine compared to the amount of time and the amount of oil it'll take to power a diesel locomotive, it's more efficient to use diesel. But is it more economically and environmentally friendly to use a diesel? No, it is not, because there are so many types of gases being produced by a diesel locomotive compared to what is being produced by um, a steam locomotive. In that, what's being produced by a steam locomotive is indeed H2O as a gas form, because it, like you said, it's water heating up by a fuel to create pressure, which that pressure is H2O in a condensed air form.
Yes.
And the reason why I think that we should be going back to steam locomotives is because the traditional, as a boy, you will never see something more majestic than a steam engine working its way up a hill, like the hard chuffing and the
Yeah,
beats.
I'm already seeing it. Those things. I've never been on a train before, but I see them. I've always wanted to be in a train. I think it's a very. I think it would be a very relaxing experience. Have you been
Oh,
on a train yourself?
yes, I have. It's very relaxing to the mind, and
Hmm.
while with times changing and we're going into the future, of course, steam engines may be viewed as outdated, in which I can agree to some extent. For passenger services, yes, they're outdated. We could be using something like a maglev train, which uses gravity to propulse itself forward. And
I've heard of
unlike,
those. I've also
give me
heard of
just
like
a minute.
I've also heard of trains that that they're magnetic, and so that they will float above the they'll float above the platform, and they move really quickly. And I've heard about these trains that they go really quick. But America isn't really big on public transportation. We're really a nation of cars, compared to Europe, where they actually use a lot more trains. But I think that, if we're talking about certain things, I think that trains could be very good. I think with carrying a bulk of items from one place to another, I think that trains still today are the most effective method of doing so. Now, I am no expert on trains. I know very very rudimentary things about them, but I am going to say that I do think that they still have a use in our American society. Maybe not necessarily a use with passengers, but definitely they do hold a use when it comes to transporting items from one area of the country to another. Now, I do know more about trains historically, and that they were this really huge development, and especially when people were trying to get from one place to the other. So let's say you're in New York and you wanted to get to California, that would be a really treacherous journey. And you can learn more about that if you want to research the Donner Party, where they actually traveled by foot. And when they actually built a railway system from one side of the country to the other side of the country, it really not only helped travel, but it really helped modernize America. I guess, Mr. Speaker James Berry, I guess you would like to have the last word.
Yes, that's my last words. Thank you for joining us on the first episode of the Nautical podcast. We hope to see you in the next episode. Any last words, Justice Henry Bell?
It's been wonderful being here. Hopefully your co-host will be here next time, but I've really enjoyed it here. Very nice setup you have.
Thank you. We hope to see you in the next episode. That is all for the Nautical podcast.
The thing's still recording, so.
Yeah, I know.